What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. It is Professor Anime, and welcome back to yet again another review for Inuyashiki, episode 2 this time around. Episode 2, I gotta say, it was a very, very good one. Alright, so before we actually get into the review of Inuyashiki, I just gotta say right now that the OP for Inuyashiki is amazing. I love Man with a Mission. I keep on putting it on repeat and also singing along every time, the episode drops. This is definitely my favorite OPs of the season. But anyway, I digress. I'm getting off topic. Alright, so when it comes down to episode 2 of Inuyashiki, this episode pretty much gave us the introduction to Hiro, which is the other main character of the series. Now, we have two main characters of this series that we know of right now, and most likely it's just going to stay with these two characters, which is Inuyashiki and then Hiro. Hiro being the cold-blooded killer, and then Inuyashiki being technically the hero of this series, while, Hiro is technically the villain. So, this is going to be interesting on how everything is going to turn out. We have an old guy going up against a younger gentleman, which seems to have better control over his powers and a lot of a better understanding as well, as it seems as though he has come to terms with accepting himself with this newfound power that he has now acquired, while we have Inuyashiki from episode 1, it took him quite a bit to actually come to accepting who he is now. Episode 1 kind of showed that Inuyashiki, while still a cyborg, is still able to feel human emotions, ending up crying and also just caring in general for other humans. While we have Hiro, on the other hand, who seems to be literally like a psychopath. He, is completely devoid of, human emotions from what it seems like, although he does get a knockoff when it comes to, talking about One Piece. But anyway, he is not really the personification of what human is. You see, what we find out from Hiro in this episode is that he seems like a typical high school kid. However, what we later find out from him as the episode goes on is that he begins to mention that there has been a trend of killings that has gone about the city in which they reside on. He is exchanging dialogue with his friend when he goes over his house and says, "You couldn't possibly be the killer, right?" But it's quite obvious that he is talking about himself. There have been apparently 8 consecutive deaths. However, as the episode goes on, we see that death toll has definitely risen up as he randomly selects at night who exactly he wants to target next. And he takes out his, enjoyment out on this entire family. Like, no joke, we see Hiro just walk inside this house, unaccounted for, completely ends up killing the mother, kills the father, along with the child. Oh, and oh my god, that death scene with the child and the father, that was kind of hard to watch, I'm not gonna lie to you. That was probably one of the most riveting death scenes that I have seen from this show so far. I mean, there hasn't been much, of course, but I mean, still, that was kind of hard to watch right there. And then not only that, but then he goes ahead and kills the daughter after toying with her. Yo, this guy means business. Now, I'm going to read you a list of what exactly we have learned about Hiro when it comes down to this episode in terms of his powers. Now, one of the things that Hiro is actually able to use in terms of his power is that it seems as though he is able to control machinery. We see in this episode that he has the ability to, with the flick of his wrist, change the channel on television, or even, control cars and making them smash into each other, or just change the direction in which they are going. So almost like a magnet, but not quite. But nonetheless, he is able to control machinery. Not only that, but apparently this is one of the most, interesting parts about Hiro, which I find. As we see in this episode, we see him doing this sort of like gun propulsion thing, where he just says bang and like does the whole gesture like, a gun. And people actually end up dying from this. I mean, in that scene where we see the mother get killed off, where he's just constantly looking at the ground and bang, 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 like shooting her, like, that was crazy. That was crazy. Now, I'm very curious if this is just like high intense, you know, air propulsions coming out of his hand, or if there is actually something mechanical that can't be seen with, you know, from the human eye that we're missing here. You know, I'm very curious if, you know, something is actually being sent out of his fingertips or something like that. So maybe that will be explained later on, but nonetheless, it's a very cool power that he seems to have. So not only that, we also find out that by simply just touching someone or sliding his finger across, you know, the wrist of someone, it is able to actually slice open their flesh. So this guy can simply just touch an individual and make them bleed to death. So, yeah. When it comes to Hiro, he is definitely a threat. However, while this episode, you know, focused a lot on Hiro, we actually got to see Inuyashiki for a bit, and Inuyashiki actually has a power into which he can listen to radio frequencies. Now, I'm not exactly sure if, you know, when it comes down to these overall powers, that, you know, if Hiro has the same powers that Inuyashiki does and vice versa. Like, that's what I'm very curious to find out when it comes down to these two characters. Do they have the same powers? Can they do the same things? Can Inuyashiki, you know, set out, you know, gun propulsions, you know, like that? Can he, you know, slice open flesh with the flick of his wrist? You know, stuff like that. I'm very curious if they actually have the same powers, or if their arsenal is completely diverse from the other. But nonetheless, we are able to see in this episode that Inuyashiki is able to listen to radio frequencies, or the frequencies from humans. However, in this episode, sadly, the daughter ends up dying off from Hiro, and we see that Inuyashiki is actually late to the scene, and he witnesses every one of the family members pretty much dead. But then that is where we see Hiro arrive at the scene. He is still there and shoots Inuyashiki in the head, but as we know, Inuyashiki is a cyborg now, just like Hiro. So he gets up and stares down, you know, Hiro, and Hiro's just like, what? Who are you? What are you? You know, so that part of the episode really got me hyped. And I really like how this episode, you know, was executed in terms of getting us introduced to Hiro, as well as when it comes down to his overall personality and characteristics. I really like how they showed that off, and it does make you really hate the guy for, you know, killing off an entire family, especially the scene with the father and son. Like, that... Oh, I can't get that out of my head. And it was also kind of see, you know, within the room of Hiro's best friend, that, you know, Hiro ends up telling about his newfound power. We actually see in Hiro's friend's room that he is a big fan of Gantz. And for those of you who don't know, Inuyashiki is actually done by the same guy who created the manga Gantz. So if you liked that, you're definitely going to like this, and you're actually going to probably laugh a bit in this episode just seeing, you know, that little cameo there, so to speak, or paying that all homage, as I would say. So, yeah. When it comes down to this episode of Inuyashiki, it was definitely a good one, and I'm definitely ready for the next episode and to see these two actually fight it off and learn more about these characters as well. Let me know what you guys thought about this episode in the comments down below. Be sure to give this video a like if you enjoyed it, and hit that red subscribe button down below if you want to see more. That about does it. Peace out.